The check hit the table like a verdict. 2 black wallets, one in front of him, one in front of me. I stared at mine, then at the server's neutral face, and then at the bar, where I made the mistake of meeting eyes with my coworker, Lauren. She was nursing a club soda like it was popcorn at a movie she'd already seen. She didn't wave. She didn't smirk. She just lifted her glass a millimeter, a little salute that said, "You wrote this scene yourself." "Separate checks, right?" the server asked, cheerful in the way people get when they know there's weather coming and they're inside. "Perfect," said the man across from me. Evan, blazer, quiet cologne, the kind of posture that makes your spine take notes. He smiled at me like we were both grown-ups. I smiled back like my face had forgotten the password. I opened the book. The total stared up at me with numbers that were suddenly insulting in their specificity. I had ordered the scallops, the roasted carrots, the little gem salad that somehow costs more than a whole chicken, and 2 glasses of wine. I had eaten like the version of myself who floats through dining rooms being adored. I was calculating whether I could put this on my credit card without juggling utilities when my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren, "Cute place. Love the scallops." Clinking glasses. I didn't answer. The server lingered a beat too long, then drifted away like a decent person. Evan had already slipped his card into his book, calm, efficient. He looked up at me. "Take your time," he said. "This is the part of the story where you decide whether you hate me. I won't argue with you if you do." I had a 2-month-long hobby I called gastrodating, which is just me being pretentious about using men for dinner. I had rules. Of course I did. Rules are how we dress selfishness up as a system. I never picked the place, I let them suggest and then enthusiastically agreed. I never did 3 dates with the same man, 2 at most, then a vague "sorry I am" slam season. I always offered to split, palm hovering near my tote where my wallet lived, and 98% of the time, they waved me off. "I've got it," they'd say, all kindness and masculinity and a little bit of performance. I would demur once, then say, "Thank you, that's very sweet," and I would mean the sweet part. I am not immune to generosity, I am also not innocent. It started harmless. I was broke and newly single and refusing to admit that my version of broke was the kind where rent still gets paid and I can buy the good toothpaste. I told myself it was a little game with little stakes, I get conversation and a meal, they get to feel charming, maybe we vibe. The first 2 dinners I tried it, the guys were boring in a soothing way, and the restaurants were places I'd pinned. I went home full and smug and texted my best friend, Priya, "Food tasted better because capitalism owes me a treat. You should know that I am not 22. I am 29, which is old enough to know the difference between a hustle and a habit. I work in marketing at a software company, a very normal job where my key metrics are open rates and whether the copy reads like a person wrote it." Lauren sits 5 pods over. She's the one who brings citrus in a Tupperware to ward off scurvy. We're friendly in that coworkers who know each other's Starbucks orders way. She is not my confidant. She does not need to be. 2 weeks before the night of the great check drop, Lauren was in the kitchen when I was telling Priya on speaker how I'd turned dates into a restaurant tour. I swear I wasn't bragging. Though, okay, I was bragging. Priya was howling, "You are the female Robin Hood, redistributing appetizers," and I was half whispering, half performing, "It's not like I'm lying, I just architect the moment." Lauren came in with her Tupperware and a lemon squeezer and I should have hung up. I didn't. I caught the look she gave me. The kind that says, "I heard enough to have an opinion." And I flushed, then doubled down. "Anyway," I said loudly into the phone, "it's not like they suffer. Men love paying. It's like a TED Talk for their wallet." Lauren pretended to rummage for tea. I pretended I hadn't noticed her ears. On Thursday, I matched with Evan. He was a friend of friends guy with a Hinge profile the algorithm handpicks for you after you've swiped through 20 aspiring DJs. 3 photos, one with a dog, one with his sister, one hiking but not obnoxiously. His prompts were sane. For a hobby, he listed weekend cooking experiments and 5 Burmese chots I never trained for. His job, operations at a mid-size logistics company. My brain filed him under could be safe. He suggested dinner at Larkspur, which is the kind of place that uses the word seasonal like an apology for charging $24 for a salad. I responded with a heart and said, "Yes, please." I arrived 10 minutes early because I always arrive early to case the room, breathe, and decide whether I'll be I offered Lena or I reach Lena. Evan was 10 minutes early too. He was one of those men who wears a blazer like a cardigan. He stood when I approached like my grandmother had trained him, and for 1 second, I thought I might be about to become a better person. Everything about the first 40 minutes was pleasant. We did the small talk ladder, job, commute, siblings, last good vacation, books we almost finished. I learned he volunteers at a food bank once a month. He learned my landlord hasn't replaced the drafty windows. He told a story about a shipping container that got misrouted to the wrong port that sounded interesting because he made the container a character. I laughed like I meant it because I did. When the server came, I didn't look at the price column. I never look at the price column when I'm playing this game. It ruins the magic trick. Halfway through my second glass of wine, Evan leaned back and asked, "Do you work around here?" I said, "River North." "Marketing," he said, "for Byline?" I shook my head, competing sass. He nodded. "Cool." I asked because my friend Lauren works near here. She's in marketing too. My smile didn't falter because I didn't connect the dots. In this city, half the women are named Lauren. "We'll run into her one day," I said. He said, "Maybe sooner than you think," which should have pinged something in me. It didn't. He waved to the bar. I turned and saw a familiar profile and a citrus Tupperware on the bar top like a tiny signature. She didn't wave. My stomach made a small noise like a creak in an old house. The kicker is that I wasn't doing anything illegal. Rude? Yes. Cynical? Sure. But there is no statute against accepting a dinner you offered to split and didn't insist on. People will tell you there should be. People are free. The server asked about dessert. I said, "We should split the olive oil cake, because I am an animal when someone else is paying." Evan smiled and said, "Let's do it." He ate 3 bites. I ate the rest like it was a dare. I was warm with wine and a performance glow when the server set down the checks. 2 checks. Not the theatrical one bill he slides to the man like a wand. Evan signed his without looking at it. "Thank you for dinner," he said. I blinked. "You're welcome for yours," I said, which is a line I'm not proud of. He held my gaze and said, not unkindly, "Lauren told me you're on a tour." He said it like someone saying, "I heard you were a Yankees fan." Not a gotcha. Not a trap sprung. Just a fact laid gently on the table. I felt heat climb from my chest to my face. "She told you what exactly?" I asked. "That you're not looking for anything serious and that you've been using dates as a way to try nice restaurants," he said. He glanced at the bar and then back to me. "She said you're not cruel about it. But you've been strategic." I wanted to climb inside the olive oil cake. "I suggested the separate checks so we could both leave with a clean story," he added. The server reappeared, like a ghost with good timing. I slid my card in and tried to look unfazed, like this is what I had always wanted. To be an independent woman paying for her scallops in full. That's when my bank app buzzed. "Suspicious activity detected on your card. Unusual transaction." Of course it did. Of course my bank thinks I'm a Victorian lady fainting at Larkspur. I cleared the alert. I tried again. Declined. The server was merciful. "Sometimes it's just the chip," she said, and angled the card in a way that worked on TV. Declined. She didn't make a face. I did. I fished for my debit card, mental math sprinting. The debit would clear but groan, the utility bill I'd scheduled might bounce. I could transfer from savings. If we're being honest, savings is just a jar with teeth and tires written on it. I handed over debit. Approved. The wave of relief tasted like metal. "I'm sorry," I said to Evan, because even if I wanted to be cool, shame leaked out. "My bank, sometimes it flags new places." "No need to apologize to me," he said. "We're good." He raised a hand to the server. "Can you add an extra 20 to mine for the tip?" "We had you running." He was tipping on his half anyway, but the gesture made my face burn again. He stood, helped me with my coat, and walked me to the host stand. Lauren was nowhere. I could feel her absence like a pressure change. Outside, the air had gotten knife bright. Evan zipped his jacket. "I had a nice time," he said, "and this is the insane part." I think he meant it. "For what it's worth, you're good company. If you ever want to go on a date that's a date, you can text me." He paused. "But don't bring your tour." He said it like a boundary, not a punishment. Then he nodded, wished me good night, and walked away, shoulders steady, a man completely at peace with what he owed. I stood on the sidewalk with my coat open like armor and wanted to be 8 years old so I could call my mother to come get me. I called Priya instead. "Lauren is here," I hissed. She told him. We split. My card declined. Priya, who is my ride or die and also the person who tells me when I have spinach in my morals, said, "Okay." That is mortifying. "Are you safe?" I said yes. She breathed. "Then consider the data," she said gently. "You've been living on the edge of getting humbled. You just got humbled by a gentleman and a bank. Maybe that's a mercy." The next morning, Lauren appeared at the coffee machine like an omen. I poured drip. "I don't even like to have something to do with my hands." "I shouldn't have said anything to him," she said before I could speak. "It wasn't work-related. It wasn't my business." I blinked. "So why did you?" She swallowed. "He's an old friend of mine," she said. "And he's been through the ringer this year." I didn't want him to feel played. "I didn't put you on blast. I just said. Fair warning." She met my eyes, steady. "And for what it's worth, I didn't tell anyone here." "I won't." I started to say something cutting and fair. Like, if you want to be the morality police, at least get paid a stipend. What came out instead was, "It wasn't your secret to tell." "I know," she said quietly. "And it wasn't your money to spend." We stood there like two people paying taxes to a country that doesn't exist. Then she added, "I'm not trying to gotcha you, Lena. I think you're better than the bit." "I'm not a bit," I said, childish. She tipped her head, not arguing. Okay. I could have taken it to HR. I could have said my coworker inserted herself into my personal life and created a hostile environment by monitoring my off-hours activity. The reality, we're an at-will company with a very long, respectful workplace policy and a very short fuse for drama. If I spun it up, they'd call us both into a room with a succulent and ask us to repair the working relationship, which is corporate for, pretend we don't know this stuff about each other. Also, HR doesn't adjudicate whether your coworker is allowed to warn her friend that you like to let men buy you beurre blanc. I did, however, write an email to myself with the subject line when this story gets edited in my head, where I typed the facts. I have been using dates as a meal plan. I offered to split as cover. I assumed men would pay. One didn't. He was polite. I survived. Lauren warned him, she didn't post me on Slack or name me to the office. I was embarrassed because I got caught playing a game I invented. I hit send. It felt like notarizing something ugly so I couldn't pretend later. The fallout was small and pervasive. The next 3 dates I went on, I reached first and meant it. 2 men insisted. One said, "I appreciate that," and we actually split. The food tasted fine. The power I used to feel. Sugar slick, smug. Had a crack through it like a plate someone glued back together. I kept thinking of Evan folding his napkin, adding tip, setting down his pen like a man concluding a chapter he'd prefer to end kindly. Priya asked, "Do you want to reach out to him?" I typed 3 drafts of an apology to Evan and deleted them all. The only one that wasn't a performance read, "You were right to set a boundary. I'm sorry if I made you feel like a wallet with a face." I never sent it. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I couldn't make the apology about him and not about me wanting relief. Lauren had done me one unintended favor. I would no longer pretend I was the Robin Hood of ribeye. My bank did me another. The utility autopay I'd scheduled for that Thursday bounced with a fee. I called, explained, got it reversed, once, as a courtesy, and moved my due dates. I sat down with my actual budget and had the miserable moment of looking money in the eye. I canceled 2 subscriptions I forgot I had. I texted an old client and picked up a weekend freelance job writing email sequences for a yoga studio. I stopped telling myself I could decorate my way out of shame with candles that smell like a forest. In this part of the story, if you're the kind of reader who needs someone to be punished in a more cinematic way, I'm sorry. No one doxed me. No one put my face on Reddit with a headline. HR didn't fire Lauren or me. That's how these things actually go 99% of the time: one humiliating night, a bank text, a conversation you don't want to have next to the coffee machine, a quiet adjustment to the way you pay for your own life. I did see Evan again, once, 3 months later, at a Saturday morning run club Priya dragged me to after I made too many unreformed jokes without proof. He was at the front of the pack with the coach and a woman whose hair did that ponytail bounce that belongs on commercials. Afterward, he was sitting on the curb stretching his hamstrings like a person who knows where his hamstrings are. I walked over, intending to say something simple. "Good to see you, thanks for being decent." He stood as I approached, because of course he did. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he said, warm. He didn't look uncomfortable. He didn't look anything but like himself. About that dinner, I started, and he cut in, not unkind. "We're good," he said. "Really?" He smiled, and there was no pity in it, no triumph. "I hope you're well, Lena." The woman with the ponytail handed him a banana. He took it, nodded to me, and turned to her. It was the gentlest dismissal I have ever received. I walked back to Priya, who handed me a paper cup of water and didn't ask. I guess that's the victory, if you're looking for the part where the guy wins. He didn't need to crow. He didn't need an audience. He set a boundary and then kept living. That night at Larkspur, he paid for his food and his time and left me to pay for mine. He tipped well and didn't scold me and went home without sending a screenshot to a group chat. He wins because his life kept its shape. Mine had to change. Lauren and I still work 5 pods apart. We aren't friends. We aren't enemies. The week after the dinner, she put a lemon on my desk with a post-it, "For tea." I nodded when I passed her in the hall. Once, in a meeting, when someone mentioned the word ethics and half the room rolled their eyes about compliance training, she caught my eye, and I caught hers, and we smiled, tiny, like people who have learned that ethics sometimes live in dessert menus and DMs, not just slide decks. Would I ever do the foodie tour again? No. Not because I'm a saint now. Because it turned me into someone I didn't like. An actress in a play where the applause was a bill I didn't have to see. I still love restaurants. I also love ordering the mid-priced thing and tipping 20 because my server is spending 3 hours politely absorbing other people's evenings. I love the way food can be celebration and communion. I don't love how I used it as a test of how powerful I could feel while pretending to be harmless. The night after the Larkspur fiasco, I sat at my tiny table with a bowl of pasta I made myself and did a dumb thing that helped. I wrote on an index card, "If you can't afford to pay your half without anxiety, you can't afford the date." I taped it to my fridge. A week later, I added, "If you can't afford to be embarrassed, you can't afford the game." It sounds puritanical. It saved me from myself. You want specifics? Here's the math. That dinner. 2 glasses of wine, scallops, carrots, salad, half a dessert. Came to $86 before tip. With tax and a 22% tip, because the server deserved it, my half was $108. This is not a sum that should crater a life. It was a sum that, when dropped on top of a week where an unexpected copay had already eaten the line item I use for indulgences, made my bank app nervous. I had been skating too close to empty and calling it trusting the universe. The universe would like me to set up an emergency fund. There's one more thing you're going to want me to say, and I will say it even though I wish I had a cooler conclusion. I'm glad it happened this way. I am glad I got exposed by a coworker and not by a stranger who took a photo and wrote a caption. I am glad the man in the blazer decided to be kind and precise instead of performatively outraged. I am glad my bank embarrassed me in a way I could fix. I am glad the story I tell now ends with me washing my own dishes after cooking my own dinner and feeling full of something that isn't superiority. If you're reading this because you're on your own tour, here is the only sermon I'll preach: offer to split and mean it. If he declines, say thank you like a person who understands math and manners. Don't build a system where your integrity depends on someone else's generosity. And if a friend at work knows the guy, assume the Venn diagram of your choices will eventually overlap with your reputation. It's a small city, even when it isn't. I paid my own damn bill that night. I paid some fees I earned by being cavalier. I paid attention in a way I hadn't in months. I pay for my dinners now with cash I can actually spare. And when a date looks at me over dessert and says, split or together? I say, split, not to make a point, but because it tastes better when you know which part you're really hungry for. Evan walked away as a man with his boundary intact. That's how he wins. I stayed and signed my name. That's how I do.